The camera zoomed in on the small studio, where the audience sat in silence, awaiting the next shocking revelation. Marjorie Taylor, the controversial congresswoman, had just finished speaking about Africa's struggles in a speech on international television. Her voice had been filled with authoritative confidence, her words sharp and pointed, painting a picture of Africa as a continent trapped in a cycle of poverty, corruption, and dependency. She had been unrelenting in her rhetoric, portraying herself as the defender of human rights and the champion of Western intervention. But little did she know, today would be different. Today she would be exposed in front of millions. The tension in the room was palpable as President Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso stood up. He had been invited to speak about Africa's future, to share his thoughts on sovereignty, independence, and dignity. His words were supposed to reflect the African struggle for self-determination in a world that often turned a blind eye to the complexities of the continent's struggles. But today, Ibrahim knew this moment would be more than just a speech. It would be an opportunity to challenge a false narrative that had been perpetuated for far too long. The spotlight shifted from Marjorie to him, and Ibrahim's calm, unwavering demeanor contrasted sharply with the storm of emotions swirling inside him. He had fought tirelessly for his people, for the independence of Burkina Faso, and now he would fight to expose the lies that had been pushed onto the world stage. It wasn't just his thoughts he wanted to share today. It was the truth that had been concealed for far too long, and it was time for it to be brought to light. He looked directly into the camera, then to Marjorie, who sat at the table across from him, her face contorted in self-assurance. She had been confident throughout the broadcast, convinced that her rhetoric and manufactured images of Africa's suffering would be enough to maintain her narrative. But Ibrahim could see through it. He knew this was his moment to make her and the world see the truth. With a deep breath, Ibrahim spoke. "You claim to care about Africa, Marjorie," he began, his voice steady but with an underlying power that made the room fall silent. "But what you fail to understand is that your words have consequences. You paint Africa with a broad brush, generalizing us as helpless and dependent. You ignore the truth of our struggles, our resilience, and our fight for independence. You speak as if we are a charity case, too weak to stand on our own, but that is not who we are. We are proud nations with a long history of dignity, strength, and self-determination." The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats, sensing that something was about to happen. Marjorie's expression faltered for just a second, but she quickly regained her composure, throwing an arrogant smile his way. "You can't be serious," she sneered. "Your people are starving. You're weak, struggling, and relying on foreign aid. How could you possibly think you have a say in the global political stage?" Ibrahim's eyes narrowed as he stared at her, his gaze unwavering. "And what about the billions you've earned off the backs of those same struggling nations?" he countered. "You profit from our poverty, all while pretending to be a savior. You preach about helping us, but behind closed doors, you block essential aid from reaching the very people you claim to care about. You use our suffering to fill your pockets, and yet you sit here, acting as if you are the hero." The room went deathly silent. Marjorie's face shifted from smug to defensive, her fingers fidgeting at the edge of the desk. The audience was on the edge of their seats, witnessing the first crack in her carefully constructed armor. Marjorie opened her mouth to retort, but Ibrahim wasn't done yet. "There is something you don't know, Marjorie," he continued, his voice calm but laced with authority. "A few weeks ago, I received a document, a report. In it, it was revealed that you personally lobbied to block African nations from receiving essential aid, simply because you knew it would hurt your corporate donors. You chose profit over human lives. You have made decisions that have left millions starving, struggling, and without hope. And now, you sit here pretending to care about us. But we know the truth. The world knows the truth. The shock in the room was palpable. The host of the show, who had been maintaining his usual professional calm, now sat frozen, his mouth open in disbelief. The tension in the air was thick, and the truth had struck like a hammer, breaking the silence in a way that was impossible to ignore. Marjorie's face paled as the realization hit her. The lies she had been telling, the narrative she had been pushing, were now exposed for the entire world to see. Her hands gripped the sides of the table as she stood up abruptly, her voice rising in anger. "This is nonsense! How dare you—" But Ibrahim, calm as ever, raised a hand. "No, Marjorie. The world dares to ask you the question you've been avoiding. How many lives have you sacrificed for profit? How many families have gone hungry because of your decisions? How many times have you put corporate interests over the lives of innocent people?" It wasn't just about politics anymore. It was about something deeper: humanity, kindness, and decency. Ibrahim wasn't just speaking for himself or for Burkina Faso. He was speaking for every person who had ever been silenced, ignored, or overlooked. He was speaking for the voiceless, those who had never had the opportunity to speak out, but now had someone to stand with them. His voice carried the weight of generations, of struggles long past and struggles still ongoing. "I'm not asking for pity, Marjorie," Ibrahim continued, his voice softer now but no less powerful. "I'm asking for respect. Respect for our dignity. Respect for our future. We are not your charity case. We are not your victims. We are a proud people, determined to stand on our own, and I will not let you hide behind your lies any longer." The room sat in stunned silence, absorbing his words. The tension had not dissipated. If anything, it had grown thicker. Marjorie's face was flushed, her hands trembling as she stumbled over her words, trying desperately to maintain control. But it was too late. She had lost. The truth had emerged, and nothing could undo the damage. The camera zoomed in on Ibrahim, who remained seated, his expression one of quiet strength. He had done what he set out to do. He had exposed the lies and shown the world the true face of leadership. "I hope this moment serves as a reminder to us all," Ibrahim said, his voice still strong but carrying a note of hope, "that kindness, truth, and integrity are the cornerstones of true leadership. The world needs more of that. It's time for the world to see us for who we really are, not as victims, but as proud nations determined to stand on our own." As the show concluded, Ibrahim's words continued to reverberate through the hearts of millions. The world had watched as one man, with nothing but the truth on his side, exposed the lies of a powerful figure. But in doing so, he had done more than just expose corruption. He had shown the world that kindness and honesty, even in the face of immense power, could change everything. His message had reached further than any political speech could. He had proven that true leadership was not about dominance, but about integrity, respect, and justice. Marjorie, on the other hand, sat in stunned silence. The cameras had already begun to fade, but she was still processing what had just happened. Her reputation, once built on lies and manipulation, had crumbled in front of the entire world. She had been caught in a web of her own making, and now there was no escaping it. The world was changed that day, not because of the confrontation, but because of the kindness that had been at its core. A kindness that reminded everyone, especially those who had been taken advantage of, that their voices mattered, that they were not invisible. The people of Africa, those whose struggles had been ignored for so long, had finally been heard. As the cameras turned off and the studio lights dimmed, Ibrahim stood up and walked off the set, knowing that his message had been heard. The fight for justice, for truth, for Africa's future, it had just begun. And as for Marjorie, the world watched as she exited the stage, her reputation tarnished, her lies exposed, and her mind lost in the storm of her own making.